evening and welcome to Being Black and Craft, where we don't apologize for recognizing our influence on craft beer. This is Angie, the Undeniable Vixen, your host. We have a great guest again tonight. Uh, it's kind of different doing a session 2 days in a row, but it is really chock full this week with guests, and I wanted to make sure that I got everybody in. So let me just go ahead and get into just a teeny little bit of beer news. So let's see what we have here. I know I talked about several things yesterday, but just a couple of different things that I saw while I was scrolling, minding my business, loving Jesus like I do. So, friend of the show, the Barrel Bee. She is recently just did something during Mother's Day. So, wishing everybody a happy Mother's Day. Today begins a new journey of barreled aged goodness. It's a simple story. Barrel meets honey. They hang out for some months, getting to know each other, and bingo. Bob's your uncle, a sweet barrel-aged honey comes into the world. In a nutshell, when I'm asked how I get such amazing honey, when I'm asked how I get this amazing honey, that's what happens. So I'm excited to share this project with Branch Point Whiskey and Seguin Moore, USA, and can't wait to show you some behind the scenes as we get ready to fill. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing your barrel, and I can't wait to taste the whiskey. So I know that the Barrel Bee had been doing, like, she does some infusions. So this is another, feather in her cap, another chapter to getting some barrel aged honey, whiskey. I can just imagine how those flavors are going to be blended and measured, and just perfect type of goodness. So excited for her as she's journeying onto this barrel aging exposition. Then we have Crowns and Hops, and they are doing something new that's limited. So introducing the limited edition Dopest Hazy IPA label for the world to enjoy. Some dope liquid, dope limited time label. So this is the Dopest Hazy IPA limited edition label honoring the global influence of Black and Brown communities whose culture, creativity, and passion transforms football into the world's most unifying game. We are proud to welcome the world to Los Angeles, and this offering being as clear as possible as who we are as a brand and what we stand for. And the illustration is from Kiki Kitty Doll, which is really a kick-ass label. It's really, really cool. If you want to see it a little bit up close and personal, go to Crowns and Hops where you can see it featured there. But this is for the World Cup. Then if you're in the New Jersey area, East Orange, New Jersey, come to Montclair and grab your friends and grab your tickets to the second annual Bob Marley Celebration of Life event. Experience an incredible 3-hour long journey through Bob Marley's discography, from the early singles to the timeless hits. Sip on your choice of Caribbean drinks with a variety to choose from indoors and outdoors. Opt in for the VIP and have your drinks delivered straight to your seat. Bring your people out for a day full of Caribbean music, Caribbean food, flavored ice pops, and uniquely satisfying craft drinks. Tickets are available in the bio. So make sure you're following Montclair Brewing as they have this event coming up on May 30th. And their tickets are in their bio to get those. Then another friend of the show, Love Sparkling Wine. They are a proud exclusive Prosecco provider for the 9th annual Atlanta Fashion and Polo Classic. So we will be selling Love Prosecco Rosé and Prosecco DOCG all day. So when you sip, you already know what it is. Catch us near the Chicago tent and come vibe with us. Tickets are it's on sale now, so don't wait. VIP is almost sold out. The link is in the bio. Pre-sale for Love Love will start in August. Follow close so you don't miss your chance to order early. So make sure that you're following Love Love Sparkling. They were talking about it. I just got like a little snapshot, but they were talking about this polo event. It just seems like it's very almost like the Derby, but a little bit more elevated with what they're doing. And they're going to have a Chicago tent. She said the house music is going to be playing, it's going to be vibing, and drink some delicious wine while you're there. And that's all the news I have. So let me go ahead and introduce my guests. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's see. Let me go back. Let's see. It was February in
Yes.
New Orleans. We
Yes.
met, and Eryse, I'm saying it correctly.
Yes.
Eryse was this wonderful, vibrant young lady that I met during the Pink Boots conference as we were, tooling around and everything. But what caught my attention was what she was doing and how she is influencing the wine industry and how she's approaching it in a different manner. So tell the audience a little bit about what you actually do.
Yes. So I'm currently a master's student studying at Florida A&M, and the basis of my thesis research is looking at the wine chemistry and yeast interactions that influences the quality and the complexity of a wine. And primarily, I do that using native yeast communities. So that's basically getting the grape skins and doing a spontaneous fermentation with them and seeing what yeast communities are there and seeing if they provide unique volatile or aroma compounds that wouldn't necessarily be there if they were being used with a commercial yeast that are typically used with winemakers.
So is it like, in other words, more natural yeast compared
Yes.
to the get it out the box kind of yeast, as far
Well,
as like commercial?
they're all natural, but with cultivating, so all yeasts that are currently on the market at some point were wild, but they have been domesticated and cultivated over the years. And so what you have in a packet that you would, dump in a tank, usually is a strain that has been domesticated and been tested for their, specific enological parameters, or like the way that they behave in a wine. So the difference between that and a wild yeast is that a wild yeast is new. There's been no, experimentation with them. And so it can provide something different than something that is, purchased in a box, like you said. Um, it's like novelty when it comes to those yeasts because they are from the vineyard that you're cultivating them from. So if you're like here, we make muscadine wine. That's what we can make in Florida. And so there has been no yeast that is commercially available that has been sourced from muscadines. So what that tells us is there's no yeast that can provide the terroir that is specific to our muscadine grapes. So we have the ability to get that wild yeast that can, enhance the unique microbial communities here, and then further like make our wines special and unique to our region, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Muscadine is it's unique all on its own to start with.
Yes. It really is. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's special all on its own, and I'm trying to think, um, like with my father who thinks that he can do it. If he sees it, he's like, I can do that too.
Yeah.
So I think I've mentioned here before where he tried to um, has tried several times to make his own wine, and basically he's thinking that, oh, I'll just get the yeast at the store,
Mm-hmm.
right next to the baking soda, and make wine, and that'll be cool.
Mm-hmm.
And just let it just kind of ferment like tea outside. And it's like, you want to try? I was like, no, no, I
Yeah,
don't.
that
Uh,
is.
that's not wild, but it's wild in thinking.
Yeah.
But it's like that's not wild as far as what you're and as far as what you're saying. So, how often do we find, or is it found, where there are new wild yeast strains?
There's a lot of research going into this subject. A lot of yeast houses, and particularly some large commercial wineries, are interested in bringing this research to the forefront, because everyone in wine wants to have their niche, their
Mhm.
read their specific taste and profile, and I feel like people are realizing that that's what yeast can help and aid in. It's not only the grapes that are unique to a region; the yeast communities are as well. So there's a lot of interest, and just with my experience, I see that there are winemakers that are interested in exploring more, and obviously, there's always a risk to that, because this is, you're experimenting. This is with yeast that has not been packaged and, told that it's going to finish at this, time, and can perform at this level. So there's a level of risk that goes into it, but there is a lot of experimentation that needs to be had.
Mhm. So is it as far as like you have this one yeast, and I'm assuming that you're experimenting, seeing, okay, this one is doing this level of work, and this one is doing maybe not so much, as far as blending them. How do you choose where to kind of mesh some, or even separate some, so it would be more working more optimally if it was
Yeah.
separate or if it was together?
So yeah, that's done with a lot of experimentation. So the way that I've gone about it is, first you need to isolate these different strains. So we identify them. We get a idea of what is the history behind that specific species. If it's not a Saccharomyces, which is typically the yeast species that is used in winemaking, then we'll make sure to get literature on how this yeast strain has been used in the past, and then we do experiments. So there's usually a micro fermentation trial that happens where you do a small fermentation which with each individual strain, and then what's really cool is you can do some chemical analysis to see what different compounds these yeast have elevated amounts of or lower amounts of, in comparison to the different strains. So if one strain is outperforming in its amount of monoterpenes or thiols, or different compounds that show, oh, this will be really good for a raspberry type of wine profile, or something like that, then that gives us an idea, okay, this is what this strain can provide. Now when it comes to when do we know when to blend them together, or like do some sort of sequential fermentation. So that means you're fermenting with a strain for a certain amount of time and then doing another pitch with another strain to optimize the fermentation. Now, that can happen when you're looking at if a certain strain is able to finish the fermentation. Not all strains have the capabilities to tolerate high ethanol, or they're slower to ferment. So maybe doing a sequential fermentation can help with finishing the fermentation at a time that works for the winemaker, or make sure that the fermentation isn't going too slow. So that's when you kind of do with experimentation of mixing these two strains together, because they can work well and provide the end result. Or we're going to keep these two strains separately because this is good at finishing and providing that raspberry note, and this one is slower, but it can help with the color stability, stuff like that. So it's really a experimental, like, we'll do strain A, strain B, and then strain A and B and see what are the differences.
So with these strains, do y'all name them at all, or is it just
So
X3598?
yeah, so we have a code in our lab for the different strains, because I've been working on this sort of work for 3 years now, and we've isolated well over 200 different isolates. Now, some of those may be the same strain, but with all of those different isolates, we had to create a code for them. So unfortunately, right now they're like PT2 and MM3 and stuff like that. But eventually, when we're at the end of our experimental phase and we have our superstar yeast, then we can go into naming them. And usually that happens with like their purpose, like maybe our champagne wine or our champagne yeast and our bold red yeast, something like that.
So you mean to tell me there's not going to be an Eryse yeast strain?
Maybe with some more time. Yeah, if it's gonna be named after me, then it needs to be, top tier.
So what when you're looking for yeast strains, um what is, I guess, maybe the three biggest components that you want to make sure to get it to that star power strain?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. I would say first ethanol tolerance, because especially if it's like, yeah, that superstar yeast, you want it to be able to finish fermentation on its own. I feel like that's
Mhm.
a key parameter that all winemakers are very, tuned into. We don't want a stuck fermentation. We don't want something going too long and it, producing off notes. And then that goes into my second thing, off notes. So if it is it producing, acetic acid, some vinegar off notes, that would obviously be, not a contender for what we would want. So making sure to have low levels of that. And then I would say to have some sort of elevated level of terpenes, just because, especially with the muscadine grapes that we use, those are very, aromatic grapes. And so terpenes are great because usually, like monoterpenes, they are a class of compounds that are very aromatic. And so I feel like when I'm looking at the wine that I want to produce, I know that I want something that is very fruit forward, very bold and aromatic. So some terpenes in there would be really nice.
Okay. So just thinking about you, Eryse, where do you hail at? Where I know you said you go to FAMU, so are you in?
Yes, I am in Tallahassee. That's where the
Were
caffeine.
you
Yeah.
born and raised there?
No, I am from Palm Beach, Florida, so I'm down
Okay.
south.
Okay.
So it's a little different here, but yeah, Florida's big, so it's different
Okay.
everywhere you go.
Of course, of course. So, what made you think, what spot, I guess, made you think, or even going into this industry, or made you even think that this was something that you wanted to do? Were you always into science? Were you always tinkering? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be a farmer when I was in high school. I was really in like I had this IB environmental class and I loved it. It just something clicked about it. And it was very science heavy, but it was still like talking about the environment, talking about the nitrogen cycle and how that, benefits plants and the earth. And I've always been fascinated with science in that way. And so I wanted to get a degree in agricultural sciences.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't until I transferred to FAMU, my second year, my undergrad, that E&J Gallo, which is the largest wine and spirits producer in the world, did a pre career fair presentation, and it was like maybe 2 weeks into me being a student here, and I was like, wine and science, like it's weird. It's like I never thought about there being science behind making wine. Like I never put those two
Mhm.
things together, and I just thought that would be really cool. That would be like to say that I work in wine. Like I just thought that was really cool. Surface level stuff, but that's what I was thinking. And afterwards, after the presentation, I mean, I'm kind of a go-getter type of person, so I went straight up to the people that did the presentation. I was like, "How do I get the internship?" And they were like, "Are you 21?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Oh." So I wasn't able to do an internship that year, but they were like, "We just did a tour at FAMU's Center for Viticulture and Small Fruit Research." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they were like, "You should check it out. You should go. If you get if you get some experience there, you would be a great candidate for the internship."
Okay.
And yeah, the next day I got in contact with the director there. Within a few weeks, I got a job as an undergrad research assistant, and yeah, that was it basically. I was like, okay, I'm in this. And
Mhm.
I just grew to love it more. The more that I learned, the more experiences that I had, internships, research experience, travel experience, I fell deeper in love with it. And I will say I fell even more in love with it when I realized that there are people that looked like me that were out there doing the thing, creating opportunities and experiences for Black people within this space. Because, you know, growing up, I knew that science was something that I was deeply interested in, but I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me that were, in to the science as much as I was. So that
Mhm.
was something that I was like, yeah, I need to stick with this.
Yeah. Well, that's really that's really great.
Yeah.
Um, I had no idea that that FAMU had that kind of program. Um, and that's really, really interesting. How long is the program as far as like when you, I guess you're going for your master's?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how long does that really take for you to get?
So typically the master's is 2 years,
Okay.
and I recently just finished my internship with E&J Gallo now that
Okay.
I'm of age. So I went back and did that. So that made me take a little bit of a break, but I'm still going to be able. I'm defending in the fall. Let's
Okay.
put that out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it typically takes 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the experience as far as like being with this big conglomerate?
Yeah.
How was that experience? Where the, as far as like, do you see yourself working for them, or it gave you feelers for other directions?
Yeah, it really gave me a different mindset. Just like you said, this is a huge company, and the bottom line is they are making sure if they're creating a product, it needs to work for them. It needs to, like I was a part of conversations where they're like, so how is this going to help this company? And that was the focus. And I feel like in research, there's a lot of just exploration. There's not a lot of, you know, thinking about monetary things, or, it's more just exploratory.
Mhm.
But getting this experience was something special because it had me thinking in, unique ways. Like, there will be conversations, like especially with yeast, for instance. How can this yeast provide a solution for a problem that we have? And that's a really unique way in thinking about something like yeast. Like
Mhm.
me, I thought, a yeast can provide aromatics, it can provide this. But no, what if you can use this yeast to lower, waste in grape skins? Or how can you use this yeast in um, using, a color that is not produced, you know, naturally? Like, there's different ways that you can use things. And it really changed my mindset of like, no, there's so much more that you can do. And solve problems where you didn't think that you can necessarily solve them. I'm not sure if
Mhm.
I'm making sense, but it
Yeah.
really was helpful in that way because, like I said, yeah, with research, very, it's more relaxed in that way. There's no real business aspect to it. So it really changed my mindset and had me thinking more business like, but it was helpful.
It seems like, as you're talking, it seems like to me it was more uh, even on the realm of environmental uh, discussions, where
Yes.
just kind of allowing you to think out of the box, outside of, okay, this yeast to make, we're going to make wine with it, but what else is there to
Yes.
it? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's very interesting, because I don't think I would have uh, connected the dots
Me
to,
neither.
what else can yeast do other than the surface level of it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my other question is, because I know that you wanted to be a farmer. I can see you in your farmer hat, had your little tractor on and everything. But as you went into this arena, did you have any, like, I guess, uh, how do I want to say it? Outside field trips. Did you have any field trips as far as like doing with these? Were you going out into the soil, looking at the soils, looking at soil samples, looking at, oh, this mushroom is that? How would that possibly play in at all if you did any of that?
Yeah. So when it comes to, collecting, so when we started our project, we did spontaneous fermentation. So that obviously started at harvest time. So we had to go out there, look at the grapes, and, make sure that this was going to be our representative for our harvest and for these microbes that we wanted to collect. So yeah, there was a little bit of going out there, seeing what grapes we wanted to harvest and collect. But the thing about microbes is that, there's nothing necessarily that you can see. They're really, really small. They're on the skins of the grapes. So it was really, just making sure that we got the best grapes that we could from that area that we wanted to collect from. and then do our due diligence by making sure that our lab is equipped to properly isolate these yeast communities that are already on the grape skins and ready to go. So that was our job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So where do you after you uh get your master's and everything is said and done,
Yes.
what would be the things that you would want to do um as far as you're going to an organization that is dealing with yeast strains? Um what would you bring to the table? What do you think that you like, maybe two or three things you like, I would absolutely, with the caveat of, all everything is kismet. What would be
Yeah.
like one, two things that you would say, I absolutely believe we can bring this to the forefront?
Yeah, I feel like I said before, there's a lot of research going into this area within wine sciences, and there's a lot of interest, but there's not a lot of people that can create a plan and go out there and say, I'm going to bring you back some yeast strains that are representative of your terroir in your vineyard. And so I feel like what I can provide is a plan to go out there, collect the yeast, isolate them, cultivate them, and do some experimental analysis on what these strains' jobs can be within your winery. And by doing that, you can basically create a commercial strain just for your winery. So like an in-house yeast
Mhm.
strain that is specific to your vineyard or your region. And so also doing some experimental analysis on the strains that you already use. I mean, a lot of people pick a yeast strain just because, it says good for white wines and balanced, But what does that actually mean?
Mhm.
What is the science telling us and what it can actually provide? And is there a way that you can optimize it? Precision fermentation is something that is always going to be looked at. Like, what are the optimal temperatures? What are the optimal conditions to make sure that you're getting the most out of this yeast strain? So, I guess I would just nip it in the bud and say, what are the science that I could provide, and provide a plan for your winery so that you can optimize the usage of your yeast strains.
What would be a typical like time frame as far as, I guess, from, I don't want to say from grain to glass, but that's the only
Yeah.
thing I could think of, from yeast to glass. I don't know.
I
As far
love
as
that. Wait,
as
I
far as
love that.
as far as where, the time frame that it would take to really get a nice uh, fortified yeast that would be able to work for someone's wine.
Yeah. So, um, I did similar work multiple times, and I feel like the time period that it took me to have from, like you said, collecting that spontaneous fermentation and having that, community of yeast communities, and all the way to the end yeast strain product, I would say at least 6 months or so, because you have
Mm.
to collect at harvest. You're getting the grapes at the same time every year, so you have to do that. Then you have to do the spontaneous fermentation, and then with the process of identifying them, and then running several experiments with them, it can take a bit of time. I would say for a full comprehensive experimentation with these yeast strains, it could take up to 6 months during that time period. I would say roughly there.
Okay. And when there's like, because we're thinking about the yeast strains, we're thinking about harvest time. When there is a harvest that did not go as well,
Mm-hmm.
how does that factor in? Or you just basically maybe using what you can of what that what that current harvest is, and maybe using some residual yeast from the previous year, or does it all run out? Or
Yeah, so usually when you have a in-house yeast strain, there are different ways that you can it keep it in-house. So just like how you have a commercial yeast, there are different ways that you can keep it. So, for instance, you can create a starter that winemakers can use at the start of harvest. So, my job would be to grow that yeast in optimal conditions, and then provide a starter that can be stored within optimal conditions. Usually, you're trying to keep that refrigerated at a low temperature so that it does not start fermenting.
Mhm.
And that can last for a few months. But if you're wanting to continue that strain, you have to go into long term preservation techniques. So, just like how you buy a packet of yeast, usually that's done by certain techniques like freeze drying the yeast cells and making it into a powder. So that's how you have like powdered yeast.
Mhm.
And there's also different techniques that you can go if you want to find a long term storage type of thing where you can keep that yeast year after year. But there are many companies out there that can provide you a starter in liquid as well. So you just have to find a way to keep the yeast under optimal conditions that's not going to contaminate it or have it start fermenting on its own, and then you're kind of stuck with nothing that's viable to use.
Mhm. Now, is there ever, or has there ever been a yeast where you're like, okay, I know ethanol, we're not wanting to have it be really high, but is there a yeast who's like, you know what, this is not good for wine, but it might be good for something else, like a beer. Have you ever?
Yeah. So that when it comes to different sugar sources, that's something that's very important. So for wine, usually you have one sugar source, and that's the glucose that is broken down that can be used to convert um, that sugar into ethanol. So that's very easy for wine yeast in particular, to do that conversion. But when you see a yeast that is able to convert to ethanol using other sugars, then that's an indication that it could be used somewhere else. So, maltose, which is the primary sugar source for beer, that will show that, okay, there's room for this yeast to be able to do that fermentation very well. So, sugar source is something that's very important, as well as different notes. I mean, you know, you don't really some wines do want like a really green taste, and if that yeast it has enzymes that are precursors to certain aroma compounds that fit well with a different matrix that's not wine, maybe for apple cider or
Okay.
for something different, then you're like, oh, these are different notes that can work really well with this base rather than
Mhm.
a grape wine. So that's something else that can be considered.
Okay. 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 So, last questions for you. I'm just thinking about how how you were mentioning uh, seeing people like you in these spaces. So, for anyone that's in the audience that may be young like you, or maybe they have some family members that are not really sure where to go, but maybe kind of into science, where would you tell them to start if they want to get into these type of science?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. I would say the basic chemistry and biochem are both hard, like sciences that, kind of get you into this type of science because there's a lot of chemistry that goes into it, and it kind of gets you in the mindset of trying to look for systems and um, different, compounds and how they work together and how that can be kind of a, synchronicity like type of thing. And that was like kind of my introduction was the
Mhm.
chemistry classes that I had to take for my agricultural science courses. That was like, okay, this is something that I really enjoy. And then knowing that, within wine, there's so much chemistry to it, there's so much analytical science that goes into it. I was like, okay, like this is the basis, and I'm liking it in this direction. And so I felt like, okay, I'm prepared to where I can apply this to wine and how, how much further I can take it. But I'll also say there's a lot of resources out there, especially for Black and Brown people, on getting out there and exploring the wine industry. I was someone that was a recipient of the Black Winemakers Fund, which is a fundraiser that is sponsored by Marcia Jones, who is now my mentor. And she was really adamant about uplifting Black people within the wine space, especially students that wanted to pursue wine sciences or adjacent. And so I recommend, going out there, typing into Google and looking up any scholarships, any internships, any externships, which are usually for high school students, and seeing what opportunities are out there. I'm constantly always looking at scholarships online. Even, I only have 2 semesters left in my master's, but I'm still looking because even if I'm not, looking for that particular scholarship, that's still opening my network to people that are in this space looking for these type of people. And
Mhm.
so that is able to show me that, okay, I need to get in contact with this person because they support these people. And that was me 4 years ago, but I can show up as a professional and show that, I am in this space. I see that they're doing the support, and I want to get connected. And so
Mhm.
that's my main thing is trying all the resources to go out there and look up, what you can apply for and what spaces you should be a part of.
Absolutely. Okay. That's good information. Okay, that's good. That's really good to know. Well, really, I'm trying to think if there's anything else because when you said chemistry, and that took me, well, my age took me out, but chemistry absolutely takes me out because I still have PTSD from being
Oh
up at 2 or
no.
3 o'clock in the morning trying to do chemistry and not getting it, not
Yeah,
getting it whatsoever. So
I get that.
to know that there are people out there that say it is a joy and a pleasure, and I love doing that. I'm so excited for you, and I'm glad that
Thank
you're
you.
out there doing the work
Thank you.
that us people can't do. But we'll definitely uh, will enjoy the fruits of your labor with drinking
Thank
wine.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, chemistry 1 wasn't easy to me. For some reason chemistry 2 clicked, but chemistry 1, yeah, that was a nightmare. I understand you.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I am really excited for you. I know you say you have 2 semesters left. I know you're going to knock it out the park, and I'll be seeing and looking for in updates on when you're getting that dissertation, everything taken care of, and you're already ready getting your master's. You got all your pomp and circumstance on. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
I know that's it's. quicker. It's sooner than you think. I'm sure you probably thinking, yeah, it really
Yes.
is. I,
This
like I
dissertation
got
is not
stuff
going
to
to write
do.
itself.
Yeah,
And yeah, 2 semesters.
but you're doing the thing, you're doing the work,
Thank
and
you.
I really applaud you for being in this space and putting it out there that it is a space where we need to be and need to
Yes,
we can flourish in.
we
So
can.
it's good to know that, and good to know that there's someone, I know someone on that other side that is not necessarily, I know the farmer, I know the grape grower, but now I know the yeast maker.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I will say, although I've, gained so many experiences seeing Black people within this space, I still find myself in rooms where I am the only person. And I
Hmm.
feel like that has always motivated me further, of being like, no, I have to be here because there's nobody else like me making decisions at this level. And so we can have our pockets of community, and I love that and I cherish it, but we also, there's still so much of a gap. So we need to be here, and we need to be, the people that are on this side, that are, deeply within the science and within the yeast, not only with the grape growing and with the winemaking. So we deserve to be in all aspects of the industry.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Eryse. I really appreciate everything, especially the lessons as far as getting into the nitty gritty of the yeast. I love
Yeah.
hearing about that. And I thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who joined us for being Black and Craft. Well, we don't apologize for recognizing our influence on yeast making and finding yeast strains as well.
Yes.
But thank you so much. And
Of course.
I will see y'all soon again this coming Saturday. I'll be coming about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll be talking about mead. So